Welcome to Path of Faith, where we strive to uplift and enlighten your spirit, offering solace and wisdom in times of darkness and doubt.
I don't get kiss from hand, as it is commonly said when things are very easy. God gave us freedom as a gift. I bring inside me. You bring you. We all receive. Now being free is something else. It's like having a plant that needs to grow through the care we have with it. When you irrigate, when you fertilize, so that all that potential in the seed will develop, and that seed can become the tree that potentially exists inside. The same thing is freedom. Being able to say today I am is you assume that you are in a process of liberating your own freedom, because only those who are offered can only freely try it. This freedom is perhaps what delights me most in my life, because sometimes I see myself a prisoner of such childish feelings, jealousy, comparison. More and more the movement of life leading me to understand from my experience and the experience of seeing those who live by my side, that true God's experience positions us in a context of maturity that delivers us from all the weights and the bonds that infantilism puts us. Yeah. And sometimes we don't understand that from low realities. So, they are really exercises. It is a spiritual exercise, raising the bridge of the inner castle, and okay, let's know what these are so called that inhabit me, right? That often are love instead of protecting. It unprotects, because it infantilizes. It is often marked. Because of a reality in love, it's just like the person who is in love. She can't see reality. A mind in love, a mind that is very involved with another person who has just arrived, is a danger. It is a danger to make wrong decisions. The blind passion. I always like this differentiation, right? Passion is the anteroom of love. We can only say that we love after having erased all the fireworks of passion, because they are dangerous. And the right not to like it, Fabio. We have the right not to like it. Liking is one thing. Loving is another. I can sympathize with you deeply. We have a delicious connection. But I am not obliged to love you because I did not choose to love you. Loving is a choice. And sometimes in our daily lives, we don't know this difference. And you don't even give the right to like someone. If so, and so is almost dying there and needs my help. I go there. I am a Christian. I serve Christ. But I don't need to eat popcorn for the cinema with the person. Of course. You have a limit that you can set. Yes, a affection. Love holds respect. This is what you are saying. I will not hurt you. I will not boycott you. But on the other hand, I do not have an obligation to live, to establish this daily bond, to change the phone. And sometimes people confuse a lot. They are It's an immaturity really in understanding Christianity. Wow. How many times have I suffered from these immaturities? I've been immature so much. Sometimes I meet people absolutely on the fringes of Christian experience, still based on obligations, suffocated by the obligations that happen to be within Christianity. And sometimes I find some people so free, but so free. They have already found, it seems to me, the deepest of Christianity. You talked about these steps that we need to dive to get to what is most indomitable in us. And Christianity is a movement precisely that goes through this achievement of what is indomitable, and then you live the freedom to be who you are. Discipline is today's word. We are increasingly plunged into a context that clears us from discipline, and this is very sad. It is very sad when we identify that our children are getting strangers. They are getting strange to any kind of sacrifice. Because life has to be like this. Life we have to make it easier. Okay, the facilities of today, they are very good. But they cannot remove from us the opportunity to live the asya and the discipline that makes every man. Every woman finds this balance, this maturity. How today's world encourages us out all the time. As inner life has been difficult, right? Nowadays, it is a costly job. My therapist always said, we think that inner life comes for free. Come, I was born, so I already have everything internally installed, right? It's like I have several programs to run. But I need to understand how they work. And really, stop talking or being away from people is not alone. It is not yet silent inside. Sometimes we think we have no dominion over thought. Thought needs to be educated at a high level. We need to raise the level of thought with good content. Oh, my head is full of bullshit. If for intellectual life you need to educate thought through concentration, spiritual life is no different, right? It's just that sometimes we pray asking God, and in fact we need to live that reality of superior dominates and inferior. So I have my instincts there, my emotions, my feelings that are already more aware, my thoughts, my wills, that are the decisions based on my thinking. And here comes the spirit. I can even put here will and thought. There is no one or anything that can enslave a mindset from someone who really wants to be free. It's the same in that movie, The Dream of Freedom, when that man spent so many days in the lonely, stuck there. When he left there, they asked him, "How did you stand up to stay there?" He said, "It was quiet. I heard music all the time." Then the other said, "But how? There is no music there. They are all in my head. As here, it is in the head that we are released. This is why this is where God happens. When God enters my mindset, when God changes my way of looking at me, my way of looking at the world, He will naturally change my way of looking at those next to me. He will change the way as I look at my restrictions, my losses. And then another destination is not to be sought, to be conquered, to be experienced except satisfaction. Despite so many difficulties, we can smile and say, life is worth it, because my head is helping me to make it worth it. Father Fabio, because it is so much easier to hurt the people we love than to embrace them and say affectionate things. It is because, in fact, human aggression is an undeniable thing. Everyone has aggressiveness, even Swedes, those who speak so calmly, they are full of aggressiveness. Some control more, others control less. Some control too much and suddenly explodes, because aggressiveness is a very positive impulse. We can't find that aggressiveness is a bad thing alone. No, aggressiveness is an impulse that makes us even overcome in life. In many moments of our lives, we lost because we lack aggression, which is that impulse to want to go on, to win, to handle the difficulties that are part of us. Very soft people. Nothing is good. It improves one day. The other day is not good again. Aggressiveness is lacking for these people. Positive aggressiveness, which is this impulse of survival that we inherited. This is ancestral in us. Many times we discount on the people we love. It is precisely because of our unpreparedness to deal with this aggressiveness. And today we know, we say this here before we finish the first block. We are living in a time of great tension. We are too much required. Because we have many possibilities, the human being ends up losing himself in the midst of this lot of possibilities. And it ends up generating a great anxiety, which is the feeling of not reaching, not living what would need to live. And it is natural that, at one point, this aggressiveness we will judge who is closest to us. Because you can't be... A very simple example, sometimes the guy works there, is crazy to slap his boss. Can't. He will come home, stressed with everything he has lived. The poor family who will receive lead. And that's where the question of our control comes in, my people. Us, you need to control this aggressiveness a little. And I'm not saying something I don't need to listen to, see? Because I'm often uncontrolled with my aggressive ones. So I need to be very careful not to make my aggressiveness come at the wrong time, the wrong way. I need to judge my aggressiveness there in my books, in my reflections, in my physical activity that I make a point of doing. There I need to judge my aggressiveness so that I can afford to give the right treatment to people. I can't unload on my mother the wraths that I bring inside me, which are proper to my being. And you've seen that. How difficult the mother-child relationship is. Because it is where these aggressive ones get too much on the skin. Perhaps because it is the narrowest bond we have, with all due respect to the father. The narrower bond I think we have in life is with our mother. And it is natural that our greatest difficulty is with it also. It is very common for you to find children who have a hatred by their mother, a hatred by their father, and have no psychological conditions to assume this aversion. Because in the name of this romantic love that we are educated, which son can never oppose his mother? What a son can never say that I hate you. This is natural that at some point in life, our aggressiveness make us experience this hatred for the people we love the most, because hatred is the reverse of love. It's the same thing. Psychology teaches us that love and hatred are born of the same impulse, from the same source. So managing this aggressiveness these days is a necessity, because you have often seen this happen, that sometimes one person is able to get one gun and kill the other in traffic because of intolerance. So we don't have to kill each other, so we don't slap each other. We need to find out where we can channel this blessed aggression in the right way, in a positive way. If you have a lot of aggressiveness in you, put this aggressiveness to work to your advantage. Your creative, dynamic process, your entrepreneurial spirit, channels there. This is not magical. It is not overnight, but my own conscience. I know that I am aggressive, so I need to be careful that my aggressiveness will not kill others. I particularly ask for goodbye at this time of Lent, me giving silence, he knows. And it's not just speech, it's the silence of the written word that need for you to give the other immediately. To everything that makes you upset, everything you think is invasive. I want to have the right to be silent. I don't want to have to give explanations all the time. It is right that we need to preserve. Indoors. Sometimes. That's how it is. Sometimes in the relationship, how many times you are charged by the other. You have the right to be silent. You have the right to make your silence. And the other has to understand that your silence may be the moment you are taken care of, not saying what you would not like to say. So the control of this aggressiveness these days, he needs to go through this experience of inner life. As we speak here in the previous block, inner life, this experience of cultivating who you are. I particularly think it must be very difficult to live in a house very full of people, where you don't have the right to your personal silence. It is not difficult. You who live with a lot of people indoors. At home, there are the people who work with me, but I am very preserved. By the time I want my silence, I don't even make a point of being polite. Look guys, I'm going. I retire because I care about this spiritual life. This inner life. Because otherwise I get worse than I am already. And I do not want. I don't want to be worse than I am. I don't want to get worse. I don't want to move back. I want to advance forward. So I want to find out everything that in my behavior, that in my choices, come favor my advance. The same thing you need to do. It's your right, boy, but here at home it's hard. Creates your space, creates your routine. Find out a way for you to have this cultivation of inner life. There are people who are legend the gospel of the day. I find the gospel of the day a great way for you to create inner life. Because when you get to read the gospel of the day, that you have the daily liturgy, you can follow even through the Bible. You read the gospel and make its reflection, its moment of silence, which will help a lot in control this aggressiveness. Then there are the other things that help too. Physical activity, as we have already spoken. The prayer group, the sharing group, the reading. My God, like a book calms ourselves. The book is fantastic. Happy from the human being who has learned from childhood the pleasure of reading. It will be a much quieter older than the one who doesn't like to read, because it will occupy the time, right? When you get old, what are you going to do? In old age, We will have a lot more time because you will stop working, you will be retired. And I don't see the time. You won't be in the rush anymore. So you will have to have all the time in the world for you to cultivate yourself. Look how wonderful. You have a timeless time for this inner life, for you to make your routine in a way that favors channeling all these impulses that are positive, as is aggressiveness. But that is placed in the wrong way. It turns out to be an instrumental of destruction. God brought us here, my people, with a purpose. We cannot disappoint you. Sometimes, I keep thinking that if there is something that in life we understand it wrong, is joy. Have you observed how shallow we are in understanding joy? When you hear the word joy, what comes to your heart? What is the first image that comes to your head when you hear the word joy? A mouth full of hardening smiling, right? Or someone telling a joke, a circus, right? Our understanding of what we call joy is often shallow. It often goes through the signs, the most external signs than it means to be cheerful. Joy cannot be in our lives just an external factor. It is a human reality that touches us every day. Or because we feel. Or why are we seeing someone feel? Or why would we want to feel? What is joy? What is this feeling or this attitude that makes us able to face life, to face our day, to get up every day, and to find an existence and organize what is part of our lives? Even if we have problems, even if we have difficulty, joy we identify at the moment the face demonstrates. It's the first news we can have from a happy person is when you look at her and realize the smile. It is a superficial way to analyze joy, but it is there. It is a sign that can indicate joy or not. Rejoice in hope. Like this, how can I sprout joy from hope? Then you have an implicit commitment, and that we want to explain now. You only have the right to smile, the one who truly prepared the reasons for the smile. Hope is compromising because I say what I hope I have to demonstrate in my attitudes. I have to make my life a context of actions so that my hope is not in vain. Not vain, not in vain. We often want joy. We want happiness in our lives. We want fulfillment. But we do not want the commitment of hope. Hope is not crossing the arms and expecting things to happen. It is an expectation that puts us in an action process. This is concrete. This is citizenship. You see, the disasters we are living these days, every day is something that happens. My people, change is the news, but suffering is still there. There are many places where human pain is happening. Then, in the face of the tragedy, what can we do? How can we help rebuild the joy of those who are destroyed by hope? Returning hope? But how can this hope be returned? Through concrete attitudes. Something needs to be done, because otherwise hope is rising. She doesn't touch. She doesn't happen. She doesn't convince us. Hope, my people, is a construction. Just as we need to release foundations so that the house does not fall, the people need to be careful of all the hardware, all the material that is being used to make this construction stand up this. But if we want joy without the commitment of hope, we will be disappointed. Having our minds and hearts in Christ Jesus is that we are aware of everything we need to do so that what we expect can truly materialize in our lives. How much sadness comes to live inside us, preventing the arrival of joys precisely because we could not wait the right way. We waited for his arms crossed. Our petition, our prayer, everything we ask God needs to be here, combined in history, from actions. I ask God to grant me your grace that it has never ceased. But I have to do my part in this story. It's my struggle. It's your fight. When someone shows us a bad reality, but it does not propose to us a solution, it becomes hell in our lives. But when someone points to a fragility of our behavior, our way of being, and puts us from a perspective that something can be done, then we are before heaven. We have the right to wait for joy, because we have not stopped fighting. He didn't stop fighting. This is the secret. This is the secret of those who go beyond the first place. They don't stop fighting. They don't give up. Joy goes away from our lives because we lack the commitment to hope. We stop doing our part. We will give up the responsibilities that are ours, that no one can do for us. We are not seeking our joy every day. We are not building from our effort, our struggle. We can no longer continue to give up what we can do. I speak of that satisfaction. You have to lie your head on your pillow all the nights and you know that you have fought the good fight. You were the human being you could have been then. You have not left outside any important aspect. You did not give up building the hope that will entitle you to the smile later. We know that every time we are willing to grow, we will have to bump into our limits. All of us. If we want to grow like people, we will bump into some obstacles that are natural. If you want to grow as a professional, you will bump into your intelligence, aptitude, and the one that is helping you to overcome the stage to achieve a promotion, a greater growth within your work. You will know how to do. You can overcome that obstacle regarding that reality. It's not like this. That's what we take courses for. That's what we study, so we can achieve the goals we have. In the spiritual direction, it happens more or less the same way. Only the obstacles that we let's deal with the context of spiritual direction is all that is preventing us from advancing spiritually. So that's why the spiritual director, first of all, he needs to know the story of the person he is driving. Worth that golden rule of hermeneutics. Every text calls for a context. I cannot analyze a spiritual problem if I do not know the context in which this problem is situated. This is why spiritual direction requires conversation, sharing. And that's why it's good that you do the spiritual direction with someone who knows you, with someone who looks in your eyes from time to time. A lot of people want to be spiritual direction online. Through email, that's very dangerous. Because when you tell me a problem you have, I can even have indications of how to help you. But often an email, a letter, such a conversation, offers very few elements for us to be able to analyze the larger context. So here, for example, we answer many questions. But we are aware that by answering these questions, these difficulties that people face, we cannot embrace the whole reality of the person. So we give a word, we throw a light on the situation that was from that person who wrote us the email, suddenly is the same as a person who never wrote us, but who is watching the program. So this model of spiritual direction, and the one who directs us, he will make it easier through conversations, through moments of guidance, so that we can reach these goals. So I have my obstacles there in my spiritual life. Let's say I have a hard time focusing on my prayer, or I have difficulty dealing with God at the time of my difficulties. Then this is a very important aspect to be worked in a spiritual direction. The spiritual director will help me overcome these obstacles through conversations. He will guide my way of praying, know my way of praying, and with me build more and more my Christian identity. This today is very difficult to happen, my people. Spiritual direction has not happened in the life of the church as it could happen. First, because of the lack of time, it is a priest just to accompany an entire community. Sometimes it is a religious to accompany a huge group of people. So what do? Since I do not have the opportunity to have this face spiritual director, to have a regular meeting with him, we will feed on everything that the church offers us. Then we get back to the beginning of the program. Our participation in the Eucharist can already be a step towards this spiritual direction. As I will live the daily liturgy, I go to Mass as soon as it has opportunity, and I will hear the priest's preaching, and I will allow that word to reach my life. I start following the steps, my walk project from the preaching of the gospel. Suddenly a book, we have many spirituality books that are very important in our growth itinerary. And then you have consecrated authors of spirituality. St. John of the Cross. St. John of the Cross has beautiful works on this spiritual itinerary. Teresa de Avila Saint Teresina of the Child Jesus. Later this week, we were remembering a classic work called Your Face from Ignatius Larrañaga. Ignatius Larrañaga taught many people to pray around this world. It also teaches, because he is alive and has all his work there. Many of us were formed, from a spiritual point of view, with the influences of Ignatius Larrañaga. With his works, with his writings. So, you see, we need to look for clean water so we can quench our thirst. I say again, nothing will replace our life in the church. Nothing will replace our walk of Christians, our life in community, our daily lives. In our participation, in our experience of faith, now we have the parallels that help us too. It's the surroundings, right? A book you read, an author that you know is serious, that takes this mission to guide people from the spiritual point of view that indicates us ways. Because sometimes, I am reading a book and God puts that book in me hand is not to read it all. I need to read it all so I can reach that part God had reserved for me. How many times do you have this feeling, right? It's reading the book and suddenly that phrase is all lit before your eyes and you have that clear feeling. I needed to read this part. And then something inside you get lighter. It is as if you went through the opportunity to be removed from that obstacle that once hurt you. You see, the spiritual direction happens like this. So sometimes, on the program you are watching, you hear a phrase that you have a clear feeling that you have removed the weight you previously weighed on you. Or you won the key to interpret that problem you had and couldn't interpret it the right way sometimes listening to what I was saying to someone else. You find out something very important that will help you in a decision you need taking or something that provokes in you a joy, a will to live. That you have the clear sense that it was God's voice in your life. This is spiritual direction. When we live this itinerary, so we can reach the place God has prepared for us. Many people stop coming there, stop growing from a spiritual point of view, precisely because they have no one to share with. The sharing is very important. We need to vent a lot. Everyone in life has the need to blurt out. There comes a time when we don't realize everything alone. We need someone who listens to us, or sometimes we need someone who tells us. And spiritual direction gives us these two opportunities to say and also to be heard. I find it interesting, Ziza, because my own life is being my owner. It's always life, right? It's the owner who amansa, right? Life itself makes the movement to tame us. When you realize that suffering is providence, too much. When you start to live the dynamics of time, you who are watching us are listening to this conversation. I hope you are including yourself, because all this speaks of your life as well. When we live the dynamics of time, when we understand the time we have, we naturally get more docilely. I think it has an acceptance movement in the soul when maturity is coming, which is not an acceptance that is subjection to the things I cannot change. But it is an acceptance. It is as if I made peace with my circumstances. I am allied with my circumstance in some way I accept. And I understand that in acceptance is a subjection to what is divine, sacred, larger, only in my life. That it helps me so much because many people, for example, ask me how I can do so many things at the same time. I always think, I don't fight with them all. You don't stay. Yeah. I think there's a thing to be pacified over time. And we no longer have expectations that provoke us discussion with the things of life, people, circumstances, with reality, with me, with my body. with my biotype. I think time will teach me how to live a real, concrete, integrative peace. And is the door of my real happiness is where I'm in peace. That story of Martin's phrase, right, Valverde? Rico is the one who needs very little to be happy, because he is an integrated person. Rich in meaning, right? It's something that then you understand the poor spirit of the saints, then you understand the vote of poverty, so you understand a Saint Francis, a Santa Clara, the saints we admire. How did the person live this? But I think which was a process of maturation of the soul and needed pruning. Imagine Francisco to be the leader of so many. He was the son of thunder as well, a Teresa d'Avila, a strong woman. How beautiful Francis understood poverty, with a lightness that is not common for us to find. I have already lived the vote of poverty and already lived with people who had vote of poverty and who were extremely bitter, heavy, and not poor. No, precisely. Because there is nothing in your name. Poverty is a relationship. There is no bank account, but it has a bitterness in the soul that impoverishes it in the worst way. Material poverty is just a consequence, right? Because if I live material poverty, I have to naturally seek the richness of the spirit, which is the richness of coexistence, to become a light and pleasant person. That is the meaning, right? You don't have much materially, but you have a set of inner spiritual wealth that supplies all this, even making you very dear to those who he has different opportunities from ours. I remember how many times I found people who were not rich and who lived better than rich people. Size joint of opportunities because they were light, they were pleasant, and everyone wanted to have around. There's no money, but she's so nice. Let's take her with us. We pay her. How many times in my life have I seen this? Because of an inner lightness, with no grudge with poverty, that person seemed to be very rich. Yes, it was much richer than that person, and it's really rich. Such a person. It doesn't look like, right? And yes. 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 It's that feeling of having everything it has. What is itself? All the time. Oh, I want to be so. God help me. So it is. God help me. Just ask. Keep asking him to be guardian, and we be aware of what he keeps. Because when I am aware of what God is keeping, I turn his partner in this guard. I like that very much expression you use. I think it's from Santa Teresa to download the castle door. And raise the castle door. This is being guardian of yourself. It is that you have the exact perception of what needs to be continued, what needs to be opened, but what needs to be finished and closed too. Closed, protected, expected, silenced. We are entitled, right? Because sometimes we are educated in the church that the Christian has to say yes and amen for everything. The Christian really strong. He says, no. You remember that at the height of my suffering, this crisis I have faced, you called me offering help, and I honestly said, Isa, I'm at a time that I'm still with the door raised. I'm not yet to visit yet. That is good. It is good for you to be aware of what you are capable, and you don't violate yourself, and not to be forced to say yes. Be free to say no, right? Saying no doesn't mean I don't love it. Precisely. Have this free and beloved spirit. Lick the wounds, right? I think cute. I have my children there and I see how they lick to heal. It is a process of care with each other. And the licking metaphor of the wounds, it is very suggestive. Because it is like I was removing the entire infectious process. Giving time, careful, purging. Literally purging what is excessive in me. What is inflammating me. What is thundering inside me. And that so many times makes me an unbearable person to others. Because one of the concerns I have to live with great responsibility, my conversion, is that I do not want to be unbearable to others. I find it so bad when I come across an unbearable person, a difficult person, that the first thing that occurs to me is, guys, I don't want to be so. It's a good start. It's already a good start, isn't it? It's a good start. We, on the trip, we came talking, right? Sometimes of people who make a mistake. So much that they expose themselves. The way they expose themselves, it is a sign for us. I don't want to be so too. I want to have the equilibrium point. I want to know how far it's fair to get. How to go. And it's listening, right? Listening boldly. These days I was with Augustine there in Curitiba, and he said, listen to his heart with courage. He is wise, but you need to hear. You need to hear. With courage and commitment to yourself. Because in this commitment is fertile land for a commitment to true God. Right? And I think we only take care of if we hear ourselves. That's right. You have to hear yourself. Father Fabio, why did Moses do so much obeying God and did not receive the promised land? Was it lack of God's mercy? No, because perhaps it is the destiny of every prophet to die without seeing the consequence of the mission. We will not always see what we planted. We do not always have the opportunity. Sometimes God gives us a teaspoon, as is said there in Minas. We see one or another result of what it does. And it's beautiful. We feel even motivated. But in the context of the great prophets, they saw almost nothing. Moses received that mission of freeing the people from Egypt, and he went through the whole process of making the people stay in hope. But did not get there. The people arrived, but not Moses. With that, God shows us a lot of interesting things. Because in fact, the role of the prophet is to keep the flame of hope. Guys, it's very interesting when you realize that the person loses hope. It is very interesting to see the disastrous consequences that the lack of hope has in the person's life. There, in the context of Moses, he needs to make the people walk. They need to make the people arrive. And it's your word, it's your testimony. It is he being ahead all the time. And every time of that process of passage, he needed to be to the people that the people needed them to be. He played the role of being this presence that did not let hope die. Today I keep seeing, after millions and millions of years when we are living this same crossing. Because the promised land is a very beautiful metaphor of everything we expect in life. For the people of Israel, this promised land was a geographical location. Because they had no place. A people who have no place is a people who have no identity. It is as if the enemy, someone came, took to his city and it ceased to be his own. You were expelled from your home, expelled from your land and taken to be slave elsewhere in another city. This is precisely what happened to the people. The people needed the earth. The earth would give the identity to these people. Okay, it's a geography. It's a place to come. But the interesting thing is to think that the promised land unfolds, and then it is no longer just a geographical location. Let's say I'm in the process of essays, crossings. To get Fabio, I can run the risk of dying without being. So Moses did not step to the promised land, but you can be sure that in the dream and hope, Moses was the first to step on that land. This is the beautiful. You don't need materiality. You don't need the floor. Moses already knew the promised land. And that is why he put himself on his way. But died before seeing the place. But he had seen so much in his dreams, in his hopes, that stepping in place was no longer so necessary. Because in fact, God's process in us is not even so much to come. but it is how we arrive. It's the same when we'll see a movie, a romance. Everyone, you know how it ends, isn't it? The good guy will always stay with the girl and ends like that. Beautiful. Everyone crying at the end. Because the important thing is not what happens. It is as it happens. The most important thing is not to arrive, but it is how I arrive. And more I discover that sometimes I think I have the illusion that the most beautiful is to get where I am traveling. But if I suddenly start opening my eyes, I will realize that the trip is so charming, or sometimes even more charming than coming. If I had a way to arrive without having to go, when I'm too tired and I have to travel, I often say, oh my God. If I had a way to arrive without me having to go. But often having to go is better than coming. And in the promise of the promised land, the beautiful of everything is not to reach the promised land, but it is what God is doing within our heart. As we dream with the promised land, the desires survive the absence, because when you have what you wanted, you am, isn't it? It's just like the clothes that are beautiful in the showcase. But when you wear it is not as beautiful as it was in the showcase. It is because it is yours. It's funny because God's experience in our life works like this. I remember once I wrote a text telling of a cart that I wanted to have, Pegasus. A beautiful cart that was in the showcase. And that I always wanted to have that cart for me, only I was poor. And Pegasus was too expensive for a bricklayer's son. So I was in the showcase dreaming, wondering what would be like that car. He was remote control. What it would be like to play with that car. Which I never had. But what do I understand from this child's desire? I was in the showcase, and it was precisely because I couldn't have that cart that I found so charming. And still in the text I wrote there from my first book, Times, Fallacies, and Forgetfulness. Then I said that looking at a cart in the showcase for a child is like a religious experience. Because I look at the cart and I have no possibility to have it. And God, we love him like this, unable to possess him. The day we are intended to possess to God, he fails to exercise his power over us, because his fascination is precisely to never be imprisoned for us. God is immanence, but he is also transcendence. I look at him and admire him, as São Paulo says. We now see as if in parts, but we will only see this totality in eternity. And the hope of the promised land is totally, all that we are talking about is directly linked to the promised land. That we put ourselves on our way to reach a place we never arrive. Why? This place is not to be arrived. This place is to motivate life, and it changes its figure. This promised land is gaining new faces. No one stays looking for the same promised land all their lives. God's dream in our lives he modifies. He gains new faces. And it's beautiful it's like that, because that's why we don't stop.
Thank you for joining us today at Path of Faith. Your engagement means the world to us. So please take a moment to leave your comments, like this video, share it with friends and family, and subscribe for more enriching content.